believe for 1 second that John Laurinaitis, that it was one of those things where running low on money, but then it's like, um, I mean, I would think perhaps Vince would take care of him on that rather than have him flip. I mean, so that doesn't really add up. The other one too is again Laurinaitis' own track record. It's no one's really gone into this one, but one of the NDAs that Vince signed and paid over $1 million to settle was for John Laurinaitis. It was not all for Vince McMahon. One of them was for Johnny, and so this is a situation. It's not Vince. It's Johnny. There's an NDA and everything like that to keep somebody shut over whatever, right? Look, it's over $1 million settlement for John Laurinaitis. I mean, Vince is not paying. Vince might pay a lot of money to keep quiet on Vince McMahon. The fact that he did that to keep quiet for John Laurinaitis is a very different story. The other part of it is that after that, John Laurinaitis was put back years later as the head of talent relations after this thing happened. So it's like, that's a real, from a corporate standpoint, when you look at that, that's a real red flag there. But again, it's how they operated in those days. They were, it was whatever. That stuff was just part of the deal then. It was it's a, what's it called? It's a men's business. It's a, and everything like that. It's not a women's business, and it was just whatever. It was just for them, and so there's just a lot there that's and look, John Laurinaitis was fooling around with Janelle Grant while his own wife had brain cancer. Okay, Kathy Kalachi, the mother of Nikki and Brie Bella Garcia. I mean, it's like, this is not a person who was who's going to come out looking good testifying in a case, but I don't know that this thing ever goes to trial. But obviously, the thing that I took out of it is that his lawyer has to believe that this is going forward and these depositions are going forward, and that he can have value to them, and they have to believe that he has value to them too. So it's, I think it makes things worse it can't make things better for Vince McMahon. That's all, again, does it make it worse for him? They evidently think so. When they released, his lawyer and the lawyers for Janelle, they released a joint statement on this one. So it's a very interesting twist, and the timing of it, like I said, because of what it means for someone's prediction of how this judge is going to rule, that actually makes it even bigger, because I guess that they feel that the judge is going to be very sympathetic to Janelle Grant, which is not a surprise if you really think about it. But it's a story there.
Double or nothing.
So anyway, I like there's a lot obviously coming in the fall out of that. It's really great, really great show, obviously. So one of the things that I was just going through, I don't even remember I was going through some stuff, and I was kind of curious just on, before I got any pay-per-view numbers, just kind of like an idea, because I have to write a story about it and everything, of how it did. So when I was going through, the one thing that I noticed, and I ended up looking it up, is that there were essentially 4 big shows. I mean, like, when it comes to Google searches, WWE. So anyway, there's actually another thing that came out of this, but WWE is 2.3 to 2.5 times that of AEW, which is about right. Probably that's about the difference in popularity between the two brands. What really surprised me, because WWE and UFC have for years been kind of neck and neck. And then obviously during the Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor era, UFC took off, way ahead of WWE. I had figured now that they would probably be neck and neck, or maybe even WWE would be on top because WWE is a hot brand right now, and UFC doesn't feel like a hot brand. And I guess that's the bubble that I'm in. That was way off base because UFC is so far ahead of WWE. I mean, literally 4 times ahead of WWE. You know, and again, maybe you just look at the gates for UFC and you can see it because UFC comes to towns with nothing cards, with no big stars, and you go out there and do, for a regular Saturday night show, they're doing $2-3 million gates. For the pay-per-views, they're doing $6 to $23 million gates. I mean, it's absolutely, again, like when you look at what sells tickets, I mean, that's a pretty good barometer of where the popularity really is. And the big thing is UFC is really, it's really hot, even though the pay-per-view numbers are not good because they don't have the giant pay-per-view superstars out there right now. But anyway, in this last month, Double or Nothing, which was the high point for AEW, obviously, for the month, actually was ahead of the WWE, Backlash show, which shocked me, because WWE is so much more popular. And it also beat out Saturday Night's Main Event the night before. I mean, not by a great margin for either one. It's like 11%, 12%. But still, I went back and it was like the last time that there was a month where both companies had a major show in the same month, that AEW was ahead was August 2023, which is the first Wembley show, which did beat, WWE stuff. But that first Wembley show was a gigantic, gigantic show. So I think that there is some stuff of, I don't say the gap's closing because that's probably not a fair thing to say at all, but AEW had a lot of interest. Over the weekend, there were 3 shows between that and also the NXT show. And AEW show did have the most interest of the 3, which surprised me. So anyway, there's that. The other story, the one going around regarding the finish of Ospreay and Adam Page. So the story is mostly true that's out there. I mean, in the sense of they did have discussions. Will Ospreay did say that he thinks Adam Page should have won. He firmly believes that. Adam Page said that he thought that Will Ospreay should win, which is, again, not that unusual. The story that's not exactly true is that nothing was decided to the last minute. Now, the truth is that almost nobody knew. And there were, people backstage, and most of them, I think, thought that Will Ospreay was winning until the match ended and he didn't win. But they had kept that under the vest. It was not decided at the last minute, though. That was known, but it was known to almost nobody. So when people are out there saying that, like, it was unknown, the fact is, as one person said, it was unknown to almost everybody. So as far as everybody knows that's talking to people, it was unknown. But it really actually was not unknown. That decision had been made. They didn't go in there on the weekend and, God, we got to figure out, we don't know who we're going to go with. What's the main event of Double or Nothing until the show. They knew the main event. So that's the story there. But the people who reported it, I mean, I don't want to say anything negative on them because for one thing, it's not. Because I'm sure that almost everyone told me the same thing. But then one person told me, it's like, it was kept really secret. But, there were people who knew. But they were, like, sworn to secrecy on it. And they were, and everybody else was just like, you don't know. And that was that. So that's the story on that. It's interesting. Some people are surprised or, thinking guys should advocate for themselves more. Maybe they should. It's different generation. It's not that unusual today for guys to go in there and say they don't want to win a match. It's a different kind of atmosphere. I think both companies have far, far, far more of a team atmosphere and what's best for the team. Whereas, in the prior generation, I mean, it is completely different from the prior generation where everyone's advocating for themselves and politicking for themselves and not going in there and going, you know what? I think this guy's better for me in this position right now. So it is unique. It really is.
Well, it's also the fact that nowadays it's like you're getting paid what you're getting paid.
You're getting paid what
There's
you're getting
not
paid.
a massive bonus to headline all in. You're not going to make an extra $3 million if you're headlining versus if you're not.
Right.
So
you're making the same amount of money
very
either
different.
way.
Yes.
Yes. And, like in the case of, I don't know about the Adam Page thing, but in the case of Will Ospreay, I mean, he is going to win the title someday. I mean, it's just a question of when and maximizing it and all that. And everybody knows that. It's just, again, does it have to be at All In this year? No, it could have been. I know like people, there was no wrong answer to this one. Both would have been fine. The company's gaining momentum. Watch the promo segment today, and if you reverse the positions and everything like that, it would have been an awesome segment, just like it was today. Swerve's in there in a different dynamic with Paige in there. There's a lot of major, if you really chart this whole thing out, there's a lot of pay-per-view matches, that we're not even, just not only just Swerve, but, again, like Kenny Omega and Samoa Joe and, other people, up and down. There's just so many different directions that you could go. MJF obviously being another one. There's like, there's almost no end. It's not like, one time, like a couple of years back or a year back where I kind of looked at what's going on in the future and was kind of like, I mean, I got matches that I can figure out, but none of them are going to draw right now. Again, and I don't know that any of them draw huge. None of them are going to draw like Punk drew, but there's a lot of matches that are going to do just fine, and the company's going to be just fine. And it doesn't matter who the champion is. It's not going to, who the champion is not going to be changing the fortunes of the company in a great direction either way. They may incrementally increase. They may, stay the same. They may go down. It's hard to go up in this environment, but they are going up a little bit. So, it can happen. But it is historically very difficult to be doing this. But they did also, to be fair, they also got a new, broadcast outlet. Although they're up in Canada and they're up in the UK, and there's no change there. Well, Canada Collision's on, so I guess there is a minor change in Canada too. But the Dynamite ratings are up there. But the thing is like, here, they're in 35 million new homes that did not have access to it. So yeah, that there should be some gains based on that. So that's the deal there. But yeah, you're right. The same thing happened with WWE too. But I think with WWE it was more I don't know, when the times I've heard the stuff changing, it was guys advocating for themselves, not for the other guy. But I'm sure that there's plenty of times where it's happened, or at least times in WWE where it's happened where, a guy says, it's not my time to win as well.
Well, we'll get into Dynamite here in a bit, but first off, the Super Juniors.
All right, so Kosei Fujita's in the finals. He won the A block. Let me get the thing. It happened on Tuesday. The final. So Ninja Mac beat Dragon Dia, and Dragon Dia could have been tied. Basically, could have been tied for first had he won. He did not win. Francisco Akira and Kushida had a match where the winner would go into, a tie for first. Francisco Akira won that. Kanemaru and Master Wato had a match where the winner would go into a tie for first. They booked this very tight. Both blocks were booked very tight. Geto was doing the parody booking, keeping lots of people alive. Wato won that one. Fujita then wrestled Clark Connors again. Winner the winner